Lauren, thank you so much for your time today and getting together with me. It's a pleasure to see you again, especially after yesterday's awesome digital marketing roundtable. And
That
I'm
was fun.
looking forward. Yeah, that was a blast. And it was actually, I feel like, and it's so cheesy to say, but it was great to get so many authentic viewpoints and stories from people around, everything that we covered. But today is all about you and Groff Networks. I'd love if you could just start, introduce yourself, introduce Groff Networks. What is it that you guys do? You mentioned some things yesterday that are a little different from your typical MSP around some of your CIO services, but tell us a little bit about, who you are, what you do.
Sure, thanks, Patrick. Yeah, thanks for having me on. This kind of stuff is always fun to do as well. So Lauren Groff, Groff Networks, we're in historic downtown Troy in upstate New York. And we do IT a little bit differently, a lot differently than most other IT and managed service providers, MSPs, in that most of the time, and this is what we did 10 years ago as well, most of the time IT providers, as they grow, they staff up more in reactive staff because you have more calls coming in, more people calling in, you need more people answering so that your service level, your response time doesn't deteriorate, so that doesn't go down, so that you can be responsive. But we made a decision about 10 years ago to focus a lot more on a dedicated process and role on the proactive side. And if you ask most IT companies, they're going to say they're proactive, yes. But do you have a dedicated person, process, and role that person does not answer help desk tickets? They do not answer those types of issues. And so now, as we grow, we staff up on the proactive role. I have, for 40 clients, we have 2 dedicated people just every month. They're going to their location ideally, but it's a full dedicated day to finding things that we can prevent. So as we grow, we just need more of that because we're able to calm things down pretty quickly through our onboarding, and then we keep it that way and we go into the corners. And then the time that we have saved from the reactive chasing our tail and chasing their tail, we can use for the CIO services, which is also a dedicated person, role, and process. And more small businesses need that executive at the table that's advising on where technology is going, and keep that in lockstep with where the business is going.
That's great. I think that proactive approach probably applies to many business types and business scenarios, right? And I'm guessing that you have better outcomes for not just your clients, but for your own operations, and so it's probably got this nice feeding the machine in a really positive way. And so I love that. Why did you get started in this business? Like what brought you from what were you doing before? And then at what point, what was the light bulb, the turning point that got you to go off on your own and start Groff Networks?
Yeah, so $1 and a dream. No, I didn't have any. I didn't have any dream. I just wanted a job. I literally created a job for myself. 3 failed employments prior to this. No fault of my own. One had to do with a lease, one had to do with a bankrupt company called PSINet, one had to do with, it was the tech bubble at the time, and they expanded too quickly and collapsed just as quickly with at least my role. So used New York State unemployment program that allowed you to build your business instead of look for a job. And about 10 months after I knew that, that job was ending, which it took 4 or 5 months for that to end. And then 5 months into the next year, I finally got a DBA that said Groff Networks. So I slow on the uptake, was not like going out and creating a product or a service that was, and I thought I'd have to focus on cybersecurity. And this is in 2005. Nobody knew anything about cybersecurity. I didn't even know anything about cybersecurity, but I knew enough that's there's enough computer people out there, IT people, I got to do something different. But as long as I could show up on time, answer the phone, and fix things, I had a business. And then eventually I bought other, businesses, as it were, picked up clients and just networked, and then started telemarketing, started doing all sorts of marketing and growing. And that's, we're here 16 years later.
All right. That was going to be a question. How long have you been at it? And if there's kind of a common misnomer or something people assume they know about what you do that's typically wrong or off. And I mean, I think of IT and I always have to think of I mean, I think of just computer issues, right? And the things that I run into, but what are some of maybe the misconceptions or things that you often have to reframe or retrain people around? Or what do people completely miss? Like what don't we know,
Yeah.
or what do
Yeah.
you see that people are missing most commonly?
Yeah, a couple of things come to mind. The first one is, our guy, resolves things quickly. Okay, yeah, so that means there's not a reason to change. But if the business grows or the leadership changes, that's when they start asking the question, I'm not sure I know what I don't know.
Hmm.
And that's huge in, today's day and age when, there's thousands of providers putting together dozens of different solutions and products just for cybersecurity. That should tell us something. And the other thing that comes to mind is, I went out, I shopped, I replaced my break fix guy that showed up and fixed things quickly with, somebody that's more proactive and they have more tools and they say they'll consult. And that consulting ended up being, once a year, they'll tell them what computers need to be replaced or they pick up the phone and say, hey, what should we do next? And they'll say, maybe you should do this. As opposed to, a dedicated process that I hinted at earlier, the aspect of actually spending less to get that result is actually a riskier and more expensive option in the long term, because you're not preventing the problems that are causing downtime. Or, downtime isn't even as much of an issue, but literally just efficiency, because you don't have the tools in place or the process in place to really look at where's your workflow not working. That technology could be applied to it. And then the IT provider isn't making enough money because they didn't charge enough to look after their tools. And now they're a bigger risk because they're coming after us now. They're coming after the IT companies. And so there's no cobbler's daughter here anymore, or you're going to be statistic. Our tools have to be the the top ship shape, tip top ship shape condition. Otherwise, they want all of our clients all at once because then everyone pays. So
yeah, your point around not knowing what you don't know is important, but I think even more so versus having somebody who's internally kind of managing your systems versus someone who is external and sees what many companies are doing, what tools are working better than others, kind of seeing what problems people have had that you can anticipate now for the next client, right? I mean, I see it from a marketing perspective. I always say this is like, I'm so grateful for our first customers because they taught us everything for the next ones. And so I can imagine that, particularly with as fast as technology and security and all these things are changing, that if you're a dedicated IT manager, you got to be really trying extra hard to stay on top of those things, and probably don't get nearly the sandbox to be experimenting or to be seeing what other issues people are having. So I can imagine that's a huge value add as it is from a marketing perspective for us.
And that's the value for the employee as well. I mean, they get exposed to so many different things here, as opposed to if you're in one environment for 100 to 200 users, like there's not as much exposure. I mean, you deal with one or two line of business applications, one ERP, one CRM, all that, those sorts of things. Whereas here, my employees, they're dealing with 4. So it's a pretty cool opportunity for the employee as well.
I don't want to get too technical, but I am curious. There's so many applications out there that are, you just click a button and authenticate your Gmail account, and you can, mass email or do tracking or whatever the thing is, and they're all like they're not. There's no business approving them, And so I mean, my sales team, my account managers are probably using plugins, tools, hacks that I have no purview to. How big of a problem is that? Is it something people are should be concerned about? And how do you guys help with that sort of wild west of applications or smartphones where I could download? I think, what was it? TikTok became the whole your data is now going to China thing. Like, where does that fall into the work that you guys do? Is it a concern? Is it not a concern for your clients?
Well, some clients, aren't concerned about the phones. Like but there's plenty of clients that are doing policies around those. But the bigger issue is the management of the IT. Like if you want a predictable result, then there's a little bit more or a lot more that goes into that process of having the foundation of this is what the setup looks like. These are your resources in the cloud. This is what the laptop looks like, and how that's going to be, a little bit more cookie cutter, so that when something breaks or when something needs to be changed, the provider knows all the things that go into it. So if you're going to add something else, you're not going to, add it to a leaning tower pizza. You're actually going to be adding it to something that's already, a process and a system. And then,
right.
As far as security, what your attack surface looks like. You know where the exposure is. The applications that have two-factor authentication. The ones that don't, and if it matters or not. Like if you manage it, if you take the time and have the process around. Our proactive process is also does QA. So if something comes up in service desk and something gets slapped in, or someone says, "Hey, I want to install this," and service desk says, "Sure," but missed the IT policy that said that this had to go through that, then our proactive role is like, "Hey, you missed this," and people make mistakes, overlook things, and it can be caught, but that's a little bit different of a process, and just having the guys that might be 30% less, but say they're doing the same thing.
Right. That makes sense. I want to shift a little bit from the work that you guys do and kind of Groff Networks into more Lauren Groff. And how do you on your own stay balanced, stay productive, stay sharp? What are sort of the habits or the routines that are part of your day or your week that if you miss, you're like, you're off balance? So what are some of the things that you do that you've developed or learned that you're like, gotta do to stay on?
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it. One of the biggest things is the peer group that I'm a member of. It's called True Methods. Also happens to be located not too far from Nerdwise. My peers in that, we're chatting back and forth every day. Weekly, we meet mostly to do sales review and help each other with deals that we're working on. But the ideas that are coming from that group, because they do a lot of content for us and how to really build that process, is highly invaluable. Like even a lot of the content that maybe I attended live, a couple of years ago, if I pick it up now because I'm in a different place and the business in a different place, I'm like, oh, now I can apply something else. And that's just one input. As we have the other inputs, like, doing business books, doing the, listen to Audible in the car, and keeping my mind open. One of the things that I need to do is network. I need to, engage others. Like when you were doing the fireside chats, I'm doing that because I want to know who else is in the room and who else I should know. And then when you're interviewing somebody, I get a chance to know somebody else, and they interpret all the things that they have in their backpack, all the, books that they've read and the people that have influenced them. And I get to take a sneak peek into that. It's like, oh, that's the third time I've heard that author. I better go check that out. So that's another piece for me. And I have two prospects that I keep in touch with here, from time to time. They haven't made any changes anytime soon, but I ask them every time, what's on your bookshelf? And then again, it's another input, what I should be reading. So.
Yeah, love that. I feel the same way, and I hear you. The networking part is a great. I'm sure you learned that through the years. I feel like this coming generation, they're gonna have to learn how to network a little bit differently. It's so many things have changed. People's communication skills aren't as I don't want to say that they have great communication skills. We're communicating more than ever, but they're not as solid as they used to be. Shaking someone's hand, looking them in the eye, all the things that reading people's energies, all that stuff it's skills that I think people are missing. I mean, even a few years ago, we had interns. We had like a small class of interns one summer. I'm getting text messages and LinkedIn messages about important things from them that you just would never communicate that way. And so, I mean, it's the same with networking. You got to know how to meet people the right way and develop those authentic relationships. I love hearing that that's a habit. I see that in you as well. So I guess that's why it sort of shines. And I think there's a lot of people who lack that muscle, and you don't see it as, maybe it's COVID too. I haven't seen it in a while.
Well, and that's one reason why we just went ahead and hosted our own networking event. Like I'm partnering with a recruiter that is a friend. I mean, we don't even use her services as recruitment, but we are both avid networkers. And she called me up 2 weeks into shutdown, like, how's it going? It's like, Miriam, we need to do something. And so it started, and we have it just open. We get, Coop's been on a couple of them. Anyone can drop in every other Thursday at 11. So
yeah,
it's just one of those things. If it's not happening, we just went ahead and made it happen.
We started them I probably saw you doing it first, but I started because I was starting to feel socially starved as well. I wasn't getting all of it. So that's when, and I think you were the very first one we hosted. Still on the topic of Lauren Groff, best, maybe most impactful advice you've ever received. And it can also be the worst advice you've ever received. Because I know for me, some of the most impactful advice I ever got was bad advice that I was able to flag and say, that's not for me. So what comes to mind when you think about the best or worst advice you've ever received?
Yeah, one of my heroes in the industry, he's actually out of Pittsburgh, Peter Bryden. He said, and I know I've heard it in other ways before and in different ways, but he succinctly said, value creation. Go and create value. Go and be value to others. And that came about the time that I was finally overcoming my penchant for selling used cars, like trying to sell my services because it's about me and my services, not about what the value is that I'm bringing or helping others, and just giving things away. Similar sort of thing from Paul Potrat's marketing ad agency genius. He even confessed he doesn't really like video, but he was doing videos like 3 a week, giving away the farm. Like give all your content away. 20% will use it of your prospects, even competitors, but 80% are just going to say you're the expert. So that those two sort of pieces going into, okay, how can I go out ahead and trust that the amount of bread that I put on the water, more is going to come back, and just trust that, God and the universe are going to take care of you because, you've been given, I've been given so much. And so I can just go ahead and keep pushing it out there and know that we'll be doing enough of it. I mean, be talking to enough prospects, helping enough prospects that a few of them might say, can you help us?
Yeah. I love the saying that, and this reminds me of everything you're discussing, your reputation precedes you. And so if you're a giver, and if you are one who creates value and has created value for others, that will precede the conversations you have with other people in the long run. So that's good. I'm curious to know, you mentioned, books and observing what other people are reading. Most impactful thing you've read in the last year, and maybe, or of all time, what's something that you would pass on to others and say that's like a must read?
A lot of good stuff. One thing that we've revisited a lot as our leadership team is Lencioni's 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. We struggled long time. We're still growing in it. Like if it was a 5-pound weight, 3 years ago in the muscle, now it's like 25 pounds. And that routine or habit is accountability. Because again, I created a family fun, friendly style here, and do your best, and at some point that only goes so far. And in order to get, the 100% growth in 3 years we want, and 10x in 10 years that we're looking at for everybody's benefit, we need to be accountable. So that's definitely a big impactful thing of what goes into that. Obviously trust, conflict. You can't just be accountable there. You got to show up and work through the hard stuff to get there. So that's definitely one of them. So that's Lencioni. All his stuff is great. Jim Collins, story. So Lencioni is all about fables, showing you how it works. Great by choice, has a lot of neat stories in it, and applying it to business. And that's where I got the aspect of my business is fine for me. Like if it were just about me and my financial satisfaction, I guess, I'm fine. But it's for everyone else. Like I got to have ambition for the company. And so realizing that only in the past few years, it's like, well, my employees deserve, their families, our clients, the future clients, their employees, their clients. We got something that we can't keep a secret. It's got to get out there. And in order to do that, I need to be accountable and push.
Yeah. You mentioned, I think you said 100% growth in 3 years and 10x in 10 years or something along those lines. What's on deck for you over the next year? How are you, like, what are your plans? How are you planning on growing? I know you've said yesterday, right foot on the gas, and I love that answer and that expression. What are some of the things that you're looking to do, in through 2021 and beyond, that you think are going to be key levers to get you the levels of growth that you're after?
Yeah, I think some more marketing automation. So we're doing the email campaigns with you, and we're just refreshing our main list, but then to go into the cold avenues of some of the list, go into a new list, all that. Like that's the roadmap for this year. Like there's plenty to do just in this market. There's potential acquisition and merger to look at. So that's going to be some time. But the marketing automation, setting things up so that it just happens. Making the decision to set it up is one thing, but somebody can just say, oh, I come across this white paper or this referral or this review or this person out there, and I can easily just follow the steps and land on my calendar. Like that is genius. It takes a lot to build, but that's something to be setting up. And then obviously the SEO and the AdWords and all those sorts of things that just continue to take time to build and rebuild. The website needs an overhaul in order to do some of that. And so those are some of the things that we got to do this year. Yeah. And then there's probably some telemarketing in there as well, because not everyone answers emails, just like not everyone answers their phone. I mean, if it's not a local area code, I don't answer my phone because I know it's somebody selling to me. Like that's just how it works. Every now and then somebody gets stuck in that, but for the most part, if it's 518, it's either a client or a prospect or a vendor that I want to talk to.
Yeah. Automation.
Except for those auto warranty scammers. Like
that's a big thing these days. I think I've got like 10 warranties that are coming up for expiration. I get one of those calls every couple of days. I love your point around automation. I think that's important for everybody. Like there are certain things that and I sometimes say 2020, but I mean, you could go back 2010, that people should not be doing anymore. Not to say that they shouldn't do them occasionally and one-off, but you really need to be manually researching all of your prospects. In a day and age when you can hire researchers, you manually need to be doing the first outreach yourself. So there's some things that the fact that the tools are out there, you do need to process the best practices, but the automation I think is an important component to have in your business, so you're not putting really smart people on really laborious sort of rat wheel tasks, for lack of a better term.
I hate paperwork. Let's make sure the paperwork is done where it needs to be done and automated where it needs to be done, so that the relationship, the conversation, this time that you and I are having here is what we can spend the most time on. Yeah.
Well, Lauren, this has been great. I want to wrap up by just asking you, if people want to get a hold of Lauren Groff and Groff Networks, what's your preferred mode of communication? How should folks get in touch?
Yeah, as far as me, lgroff at groffnetworks.com. That's 2 F's. F is in Frank. lgroff at groffnetworks.com.
All right.
Easy
Well,
enough.
and that's where we'll send them. And again, Lauren, thanks for the time. It's been a pleasure, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Patrick.